This is human epidemiology in a nutshell. Epidemiology is a science started, 50s pretty much with Ansel Keys. Seed oils were introduced in the late 1900s, right? There's a lot of epidemiology looking at the effect of seed oils on human health, and they all look at populations that have been eating seed oils for decades, right? They never look at populations that don't look at seed oils. When you start looking at populations that don't look at seed oils, like the Catawans, the Tsimane down in Latin America, or the Eskimos prior to the introduction of Western foods, or you go through Weston Price's work, what you realize is that the people who don't eat seed oils don't ever have any of these problems that we're going to talk about today. That's a fundamental problem with epidemiological research, starting with Ansel Keys, is that he did the research in the countries that had an advanced academic system where they could support his research project. But that meant he's looking at, countries in Europe and Japan and Asia. He's not looking at, the Amazon jungle in Latin America, in South America. He's only looking at the people who've already been on an American-style diet for decades. It's a real fundamental problem with the field.
And I've talked about this in the past as well. If you're looking at dirty water, all of your associations are going to look differently. There's a paper that I've talked about multiple times suggesting that only 12% of the US population, I think based on a 2016 survey, is free from any of the markers of metabolic syndrome.
Right.
Therefore, 88% of the population has at least one indicator of metabolic unhealth. And this will come up in future podcasts that I will do with people discussing lipids. But if your entire population or the majority of the population you're surveying is sick, is metabolically unwell, you may see correlations that are not reflective of otherwise metabolically healthy individuals. That is why I think that epidemiology, for all of its limitations, looking at cultures like the Catawans, the Tavaruans, the Tukasinta, the Kaiwi-Meno, the Tsimane, the Nigerian Yoruba, there's so many of these populations, the Hadza, these people don't have the same incidence of cardiovascular disease that we do, and they eat tons of saturated fat. Many of them eat carbohydrates, but what do they do differently than humans? In the westernized countries, they don't eat seed oils. Well, that's a really interesting correlation. We can't draw a causative inference, but we can draw some really compelling hypotheses, which we are exploring here today. But we must not be confused by large volumes of epidemiology done in dirty water, quote unquote, done in populations that are metabolically unhealthy. Garbage in, garbage out. You can give me a mountain of garbage and it's still garbage. You can do a meta-analysis of garbage and everybody in there is garbage. So
yes, that's exactly right. This is something that I've talked to Sean Baker about over the years as regards lab values, right? So the lab values that you get back in standard tests their normal is a statistical normal based on the population that they're looking at, who, as you just described, are 90% sick. So they never go out and look at healthy populations. They never go out and look at a population that has a zero rate of heart disease or a zero rate of cancer effectively. I mean, some of these populations are literally that close. All they're looking at is sick people, and they're saying, this marker is healthy because it's in this normal statistical range, but it doesn't mean normal in the sense of having a healthy outcome. It means statistically normal because it's in a band based on the numbers of the rest of the sick people that we're looking at. That's not really a valid way to do this sort of science, in my opinion.
I completely agree with you, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I'll just share the rest of the screenshots from this Gauche paper because they're really cool. These are the ones we were looking at earlier, the healthy mitochondria, the broken mitochondria. And here's a graph in the paper. You can look at cardiolipin on the y-axis on the normal diet. Here they made them diabetic with streptozocin, which is part of the mouse model. But look at the N6 PUFA diet. Look at the cardiolipin levels. They're a fraction of what they are on a normal diet in mice. So that's pretty striking.
Even the mice that are poisoned to make them type 1 diabetic are healthier and the mice that are fed seed oils and not poisoned, which tells you from a toxicology perspective that seed oils are a worse toxin metabolically than the poison that they're using to make these mice into type 1 diabetics. That's just an amazing finding.